Welcome to the Misogi Method with work happiness expert Jody B. Miller. Each week, Jody introduces you to amazing people who have broken through huge barriers to achieve meaning, success, and happiness in their lives. For every one of us, the path to lasting joy has always been there, but it may take a Misogi to get you on it. Jody did it, her guest did it, and now you can too. Here's your host, Jody B. Miller.
This is Jody Miller. I am so excited to be starting this podcast. I've been wanting to do this podcast for about 3 years now, but I've been busy writing books, articles, speaking at conferences, helping companies create more engaging employee cultures. I've been helping professionals find their dream job, and I've just been really busy. And now I am carving out the time. I just read the book Essentialism, and I've dedicated myself now to the core things that have so much meaning to me. And this podcast is one of them because it's a way for me to speak to so many of you and actually bring valuable experience and advice and research to you about the topic that I'm passionate about. And this is what I call the Misogi Method. And I'm going to talk about what a Misogi is in this first episode, but throughout the episodes of the Misogi Method, which is basically breaking through barriers to find happiness and meaning in your work and life, I'm going to be interviewing people, CEOs, entrepreneurs, psychologists, artists, just amazing people who have gone to the outermost limits of the outside of their comfort zone in order to find true happiness and meaning in their work and in their lives. And so that's really what the Misogi Method podcast is all about. It's going to be so much fun. I have so many great guests lined up. But I wanted to talk this morning and share with you the idea of what a Misogi is and start to get you thinking about your own Misogi and your own happiness and your own passion and your own meaning and your own desire for what you want to do in your life. And it really doesn't matter what your age is or what point you are at your life. You could be young, a kid. That's where you actually develop a lot of what you desire is when you're a child. I give talks about this a lot I call it TGIM, thank God it's Monday, because we go back into our passions when we're a kid and sometimes we just let those go, yet they're still inside us. So we'll get to that, maybe not so much in this episode because I really want to lay the foundation for the podcast. So I want to tell you a story that kind of encompasses the idea of Misogi. And then I'll explain to you where Misogi came from, how it's evolved, and how it applies to you. And how this podcast can be really be helpful and inspirational and motivational for you. And it's passion for me, and so you'll be hearing from me every week with great guests. So I want to tell you a quick story. When I was in 6th grade, I was taking a science lesson from my teacher. In 6th grade, one teacher teaches everything. I was in New Jersey. I grew up in a small town. And we were learning how to make holograms. Well, holograms aren't anything like they are today. I mean, basically, it's virtual reality. But at the time, it was a matter of taking different cameras focused on an object with plates of glass and creating a virtual view of this item. So we all decided on a die, let's say in a game of Parcheesi, you throw the dice, or in a game of left, right, center, whatever. So we had a die, and we did the whole cameras, and we took photos of this die and hopefully created a hologram. But it was kind of a bummer because no one could find it. We would look at the plates of glass, and you're supposed to look at the glass but see almost in the air, if that makes sense to you. If you think of virtual reality, you're sort of seeing things in the air. Or if you're looking at on your windshield of your car, you can now look at temperature and speed and distance and all that. So it's sort of like that, where you see these things in the air. And it was a very young time in the evolution of holograms. And so none of us could find the view or the vision of this hologram. And so everyone was sort of discouraged. And I don't know, I just felt like it was there. I mean, we went through the process, we did it right. So as the class was getting ready to leave and gathering their books, I just sat there at the lab counter and I started staring at these plates of glass. And I thought, maybe the hologram of this die isn't in the glass at all. It's outside of it. And so I started looking around the edges of the glass and sort of to the right and to the left and looking forward but letting my peripheral vision guide me. And all of a sudden, I saw the die in the air, but I didn't just see one hologram. I saw 5 of them way outside the plated glass, which is where this virtual vision of this dye was supposed to reside. So I called over the teacher and I said, wait, everybody come see, I found them. And they said, them? There's only one. I said, no, there are 5. So I got everyone to look outside the limits of the experiment into their peripheral, and there everyone saw them, and it was so exciting. That inspired me to go down a science route in my life. And while I didn't end up a scientist or a PhD, I did end up enrolling in college in marine biology because I loved the science. I loved chemistry, I loved physics, I loved all the sciences. And so I ended up having that be my major in college, which I did change later, but I'll tell you about that in another podcast when we bring on other guests. But the whole idea here is that a Misogi is challenging yourself to go way outside your comfort zone. So this experiment to me was the epitome of what a Misogi is. You get outside the traditional way of thinking, traditional expectations. Sometimes people think you're a little nuts because you go for the outrageous solution to outrageous problems or outrageous challenges or outrageous situations. So that's sort of the idea of a Misogi at its core. Let me give you another example, a more personal example. You might be in a relationship that is where you're not happy, but you're afraid to leave. You're afraid to leave because of the security. You're afraid to leave because you maybe don't lack confidence in yourself to make it on your own. You're afraid to leave because you're afraid of the repercussions. All these things, yet you know deep in your heart that you want to leave this relationship. Well, I was in one of those for a long time, and I wanted to leave for a long time, but my relationship was comfortable. And so the problem was the comforts were fine, but after a while, stuff doesn't really matter when you're unhappy. And I realized that Jody had been lost in the process. I kind of didn't even know who I was anymore. Where was that creative Jody who used to make up plays and play hide and go seek tag and create a little mischief and write songs and write poems and win contests and be on the homecoming court? Like, where was that Jody who just went for it and let her just creativity blossom? It had really been squelched, and I knew how to leave this relationship. So I got up the courage, and I did. So you might say, okay, Jody, that was your Misogi. You went way outside your comfort zone and you left the relationship. And it was scary. So being something a little scary is actually part of Misogi, but in actuality, that was only the beginning of my Misogi. So I left the relationship, which was like part 1 of a Misogi. And by the way, the Misogi rule is that it needs to have a 50% or greater chance of failure. So it's got to be a big reach. It's not just let's go outside the comfort zone or let's set a goal or let's do something on a bucket list. We're talking big reaches here that change us and transform us, give us clarity, give us confidence, give us a sense of self, allow our creativity to blossom, give us more self-love, and let the fear fall away. And then you get to this point where you feel like you can take on the world. That's when you know it's your Misogi. So part 1 is that I left the relationship, and that was way outside my comfort zone, and I was scared, and here I was from a 6-bedroom house to an apartment. Trust me, that was scary. I was insecure, I didn't know who I was, and I sat in this apartment with my puppy, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to take this slow. I'm going to walk my dog, I'm going to love my puppy, I'm going to love my kids, I'm going to start to love me again more. But I knew I had to do something really, really outrageous in order to affect change in my life. I mean, you've heard the saying that outrageous times call for outrageous solutions. That's the stage that I was at. So I thought of all sorts of things. I thought, okay, I'm going to go walk the 136 miles across England. I'm going to go do the Spain sojourn pilgrimage. And I was like, no, that's not really it for me. That's not really going to excite me or scare me enough. I knew I could do that. I'd run my marathons. That wasn't it. But what did it for me was the decision to go immerse myself into a tribe in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Now, this was extremely scary for me for several reasons, and this is why I knew it was my Misogi. Number 1, I'm afraid to fly. So because I was afraid to fly, the only way into the Amazon rainforest is by these tiny little planes where the little windows are open and like 4 people can squeeze in. Very scary, very bumpy. I had anxiety, and I thought I may not go. So that was number 1. I had to get over that in my head. Number 2 is that I decided to embark in a ceremony with this tribe called Ayahuasca. Now, ayahuasca is a ceremony where you drink this concoction of these natural herbs that the shaman or the medicine doctor or the elder or the wise one of the tribe goes away for 2 days into the forest, into the Amazon rainforest. He creates this mixture and you drink about a quarter cup of it. And then you have these awake dreams and visions. And so the issue with this ceremony is that you have to actually throw it up. If you don't throw it up, it's poison. You could die. Now, I'm not advocating doing a life or death misogi in your life, but I knew I could do this. It's been done before. I knew I could throw it up. But my concern is that I did have a heart condition and there were no doctors there, but I did have medicine with me. So I thought, okay, I have enough comfort here that I think I can undergo this misogi that's really going to change me and help me find who I am again. So I went, I got through the plane ride, I got through the rituals before the ayahuasca, I went through many ceremonies with this tribe, I learned about them, I lived with them, I learned to love these people, and then I did do the ayahuasca ceremony, and it was successful because I just let myself go and said, it's all going to be okay. And after the end of that ceremony and speaking with the shaman through 3 interpreters, he ended up telling me, you are taken care of. Mother Earth has you in the palm of her hand. You are always being watched over. You are safe. And for some reason, the word safe really resonated with me. And I left that experience of 10 days in the Amazon rainforest knowing who I was again. I gained this calm sense of confidence, this sense of clarity of who Jody was. And then my creativity just blossomed. I wrote my 4th book, which became a bestseller. It's called From Drift to Shift. It covers the stories of amazing people who've gone through incredible challenges and they've come out on the other side happier in their lives, in their work. They're doing things that are different. Some are still in their positions, but they've totally changed and they've become happier and they've become more confident and they've become more sure and they've started to give back to the world. So these are the sorts of things that happen when you undergo a misogi. Throughout these episodes of these podcasts that I'll be doing, I will have professional athletes on here who've undergone misogis. I will have CEOs. I will have artists. I will have psychologists. I will have everyday people who've undergone major changes in their lives. And we'll talk about how they did it and how they changed and how you can learn to become the best, happiest, most productive, most passionate you've ever been before. So welcome to the Misogi Method, breaking the barriers to achieve happiness and meaning in your life. I'm Jody Miller. I am your host, and I am so excited for you to be part of this podcast. And thank you again, and we'll see you next week. Take care.